Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Nothing is Wasted podcast. I'm your host, Davey Blackburn, and I am yet again on location at Refuge Widowers Retreat. If you don't know anything about Refuge Widowers Retreat, my dear friend Daniel Brooker started this ministry for widowers. It is, that we know of, the only evangelical widower ministry that serves widowers by taking them on retreats. And so every spring and every fall, I joined him. I needed to make sure I got some of these podcast intros cut for the team so they could get these out to you in time. So I am filming and recording right here on set. If you notice that the microphone sounds a little bit different because I'm using my travel microphone. And if the video is a little bit different, the set's a little bit different. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's because I'm sitting right here in the cabin that I stay at every time we do this retreat. It's been a very sacred and sweet time. It always is. It always is. In fact, this time, it always seems like these retreats fall on the anniversary of my late wife's death every year, which I can't think of a better way to spend that day than doing what she loved the most, and that's loving on and serving people and pointing them to Jesus. I've always tried to think about how to get out in front of and take back territory in the spiritual on that day, because November 11th, 2015, the enemy robbed something from me and from my family, from my son. He took the most important person in this world and in my life to me. He took that from me. He also took my unborn baby, Evie. And so on November 11th, every year, I try to think, what can I do to take back territory in the spiritual, to not let the enemy win twice in my life, to walk in the redemption of my story. Redemption is when you decide you're not going to let the enemy win in your life. You're not going to partner with him to cause this to get you spiraling out of control or devolve into some hollow version of yourself, but instead you're going to partner with God to take back the story, to turn your pain around into purpose. That's what redemption is. And the moment you decide that's the moment you begin to step into your redemption story. So this happened to be 10 years since my wife passed away, and I spent the day yesterday sharing with these men about how they too don't have to get paralyzed in the middle of their valley. They can walk through it. They can come out. They can have a renewed sense of purpose, and they can heal and be whole again. They don't have to walk around limping in life. They can have an abundant life, even still, because our God is faithful. He's faithful to replace the spirit of heaviness with a garment of praise, to restore and renew. Scripture tells us in 1 Peter 5, it says, though you suffer for a little while, the God of all grace, he himself will. So he doesn't send any emissary or ambassador on his behalf. He himself will confirm it. Well, it says this, he himself will restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish your feet. That's a promise from Scripture. And that's what I've seen happen in my life. That's why we started the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We have other people who are sharing testimonies of how God has done that in their life. And we want you to know that God will do that in your life as well. So grateful that you're back with us. Glad that you're being patient with me as I'm filming and recording on set. And I want to start with this question. What do you do when the story you thought God was writing suddenly takes a turn that you never saw coming? Like, what do you do when the lights go out spiritually? When prayer feels like a voicemail no one checks, and grief pulls the thread that unravels the rest of your life? If you've ever been there, if you can relate to that, then today's conversation is for you. My guest today is someone you may not realize that you already know. She's been shaping this show for years, but today we're pulling back the curtain. Catherine Fitzgerald is our podcast producer and content director here at Nothing is Wasted, and she is joining me today for the first time to share her story on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. She's been in charge of sharing so many people's stories, and today she's sharing hers. She is also the editor of our new devotional, Hope in the Valley, 42 Days of Healing Through the Psalms After Loss, Grief, and Tragedy. And this was her brainchild. She came to me and she said, I want to do a devotional, but I want to invite other voices from the podcast, from our ministry, from people in your life, Davey, from people that I know in my life, and other people that have been friends of the ministry. I want to invite them to contribute to this. I think it'd be really cool to go through the Psalms with people who have these incredible stories, and they've borne testimony of how God has shown up in their story. And we can have them each write a devotional and put it in a compilation of 42 days to encourage people. And it is such an amazing resource. Beautiful. We're taking pre-orders now. You can pre-order it, and we should have it to you before Christmas. We're working really hard to make sure that we can get this off the press to get it to you before Christmas. You can pre-order it at nothingiswasted.com/hope in the valley. We'll put the link in here right now. But Catherine lives in coastal North Carolina with her husband. Their 3 kids, their 2 dogs, and because it's real life, 9 chickens. She homeschools. In fact, she's really been instrumental in helping Christy and I wrap our head around homeschools. Wrap our head around homeschooling. She wrangles schedules. She's just kind of the schedule Marie Kondo, if you will. And behind the scenes, she's been the steady heart helping us tell stories that meet you in your own valley. But what you'll hear today isn't just Catherine's gifting, it's her story. See, years ago, her family did something beautifully unconventional. They adopted her adult brother, Zach, at age 25. They wanted to give him a belonging that he'd been searching for his whole life. And this story is a picture of grace. It's a family saying, you belong here. No, for real, you belong here. No expiration date. But then in 2018, a cascade of unexpected medical complications took Zach's life. The shock, the ICU chaos, the second guessing. I know many of you know that terrain. I do all too well. And right there, Catherine was thrust into what the saints of history have called the dark night of the soul, where she couldn't feel God, she couldn't hear him. The people she depended on, they didn't know how to show up. So God's people were even absent. And this thread of loss got pulled and everything began to unravel. And let me tell you why I'm grateful for Catherine's voice. And as she shares her story, you're going to be grateful for it as well. She doesn't offer a polished answer. In fact, that's like the last thing. She is like so averse to pithy theological phrases. She doesn't offer that. She offers presence. She talks about how God invited her not first into doing, but into being, into quiet, into the slow work of healing her union with him. And she's going to share how the Psalms, especially Psalm 23 and even the stark honesty of Psalm 88 became a lifeline for her when everything else was falling apart. Now, if you've ever read Psalm and you thought, okay, this is a little too dark to be in the Bible, Catherine's going to help you see why that kind of honesty is actually a doorway to hope. You see, God's not allergic. He's not allergic to the truth of how you feel. He's not intimidated by your raw emotions. And so you're going to hear how grief didn't just challenge Catherine's emotions. It started to deconstruct parts of her theology, her identity, her pace. She'll talk about shifting from earning God's favor with activity to learning God's presence and stillness, from charge the hill, that kind of a mindset, to let's just sit with the shepherd. She talks about going from fixing grief like a problem to letting the Lord companion her through it. And in God's kindness, how that journey in the valley is now bearing fruit for others through this podcast right here, this community that you're a part of, this thing that you listen to every week, and through this new devotional that has gathered voices from our community to walk with you day by day through Scripture. So if you're in a season where your heart is raw, I want to say this as we begin. God's silence is not his absence. You hear me? God's silence does not mean his absence. Sometimes the surgery he wants to do in us happens under what you could call holy anesthesia. Quiet places where he's closer than what you could have ever imagined, and really closer than you can sense. And sometimes, like Catherine's going to describe, the work is simply to stay at the table with him long enough for love to do what love does. So as you listen, I want you to consider a couple of reflection questions. I want you to think about, where have you treated grief like a problem to solve instead of a place to meet God? Think about that. As you listen to this, I want you to think about, what psalm could you carry with you this week? Just one, to read every single day slowly until it begins to turn the tables on you and starts to read you. And then I want you to think about, who in your life needs to belong the way Zach needed to belong, with no expiration date. Who can you, inspired by Catherine and her family story, who can you do that for? Now, listen, if you're looking for a companion in this kind of season, Catherine edited the Hope in the Valley devotional that we're releasing. You can pre-order it now. We'll get it to you as fast as we can, hopefully by Christmas. I'm trying not to make any promises, but we're getting it out the door as soon as possible to get it to you by Christmas. Pre-order it now. Go to nothingiswasted.com/hope in the valley. It's 42 days of honest stories and scripture reflections that don't rush the healing process, but they walk with you. You can find it at nothingiswasted.com/hope in the valley. It pairs beautifully with the Pain to Purpose devotional that maybe you've already taken, Pain to Purpose course that you've gone through. But it can also just be a gentle guide by itself if you're not ready to take the full course yet. Okay, let's go ahead and step into this conversation. And you know what? Before we do that, let me share this with you. We also, I don't know if you know this, but Nothing is Wasted Ministries is a nonprofit, and we are launching an end of the year giving campaign. And I just want to encourage you, if this podcast and this ministry has impacted you in any way, and you feel like you have the desire, the call, the means, the nudge to do something that would help to pay this forward, to support this ministry financially, I want you to go to nothingiswasted.com/legacy of hope. Nothingiswasted.com/legacy of hope. And there you'll find some of the details around this end of the year giving. We've got up to $50,000 right now of matching donations. So that means that if you, as the podcast listeners, as our community, if you can help us raise $50,000, we have another $50,000 that's going to be matched with that. And what this does is this helps us to expand this ecosystem specifically into churches so that more and more people can experience the healing power of what Jesus does in the middle of our valley. We get to get in front of more pastors, more ministry leaders, more churches. We can launch Pain to Purpose in more and more environments. And so we want to invite you to be a part of this end of the year giving campaign, Legacy of Hope, nothingiswasted.com/legacy of hope. You can go visit that right now and help us as we are helping to pay this forward to more and more listeners, more and more people who have not been touched yet by Nothing is Wasted Ministries. Well, Catherine Fitzgerald, it is so great to finally have you on the Nothing is Wasted podcast.
Thanks for having me, Davey.
I know you have been on here before because you've been on different episodes where we have kind of talked about some exciting things that are going on. Nothing is wasted, but we've never actually had you on to share any bit of your story.
No.
And people don't realize this, but your story is actually part of, in a lot of ways, the genesis and the origin of Nothing is Wasted in and of itself.
Yeah.
You've been involved in this ministry for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. You have been kind of it's weird to say it this way, maybe like the man behind the curtain in a lot of ways, right? If we reference that, yeah. You have been the driving force behind so much of the content that we put out, the things that we do. And so here we are, we're pulling back the curtain and you get to see Catherine Fitzgerald's heart, which is, I'm not my
favorite side of the camera to be on, but yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, man. Well, among other things, Catherine, you have helped us tremendously this past season with homeschooling. So thank you for that.
Yes.
She is, aside from all the things she's going to share here in this conversation, she's a homeschool extraordinaire. So any of you homeschooling families out there that need some advice on it, we'll put you in touch with Catherine because she's got it all figured out, don't you?
I don't know about that, but something. Figuring out as I go.
Well, Catherine, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been on this journey for a while. You've been with us for a while. So give us a little context.
Yeah, so my name is Catherine Fitzgerald. I am the podcast producer and content director for a little ministry called Nothing is Wasted. I live in Eastern North Carolina with my husband, Rick, who is a former military pilot turned instructor pilot. My 3 kids, my oldest, Grace, is away at college for her freshman year, which is a whole new kind of grief that we could do a whole episode on.
Good, yeah.
My middle kiddo, Asher, is a middle schooler, and as is my youngest, Mercy. And so I homeschool those 2 still. So our class size is cut by 33% this year. So, and we live on a few acres, not as many as you, and we have many less animals than you have. We've got about 9 chickens and 2 dogs and a bearded dragon. So we call it farm-ish. We're not a full-blown farm. We no goats yet that chase us. So
Does that all of a sudden make you a full-blown farm when you have goats?
I feel like goats is like you've leveled up.
You've gone to the next level. Yeah, well, a pig and a cow, here we come. Let's see what that'll really, then it's like full-fledged.
Yeah, you will be in it. So.
That's amazing. And I guess if you're homeschooling well, then the enrollment going down is a good sign. Is that right?
It's a great sign. So it means you've reached the end at some juncture.
Oh, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Catherine, you and I have a really unique intersect. How you got connected with the ministry, how you got connected to the Blackburn family. I've shared it from my perspective. In fact, got to spend some time with your family a couple weekends ago down in Raleigh without you there.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, how did this happen? And I was like, this is a fun story to share. I'd love for you to share that with our community.
Yeah. So I guess it started, the main part of our intersection started about in 2018. I lost my brother, Zach, and just a little backstory on our family and its makeup. A very unique family. I was born into 2-parent household. There was a lot of trauma in my early years and just instability due to my dad's struggle with mental health and addiction. Had a very loving mother who really just kind of held life together for us. Grew up with siblings. All my siblings are adopted, so I was the only biological kid in our family. So my oldest brother, Jason, was adopted from Korea. My youngest sister, Alexis, was adopted from China. And then Zach was adopted also from Korea first. And so he has a very unique adoption story in that he was adopted as a toddler by a family that was very dysfunctional, ended up divorcing around the time Zach was about 10 or 11 years old. He asked to go visit the father for a summer, and the mom said, if you go, don't come back. And so Zach went to live with the dad, and the dad was an alcoholic and would basically leave Zach for really long stints, like 2-3 months at a time, would send some money back. He lived on a small Outer Banks island, so no one really said anything. But basically from about 11 years old on, Zach was pretty much on his own, raising himself. And so he had, the wound of adoption, of just that sense of abandonment, and then having it again with the family that adopted him. When he was born, he had a heart defect that they had done some surgery in his early years and not sure how much follow-up care. But so Zach just had this longing for family, for belonging. Yeah. And we met him. He was probably 20 at the time we met him. I was 3 years younger than him at church. And, it was a very, unique thing to see a Korean guy at church, and our family with just our makeup just noticed it, of course. Yeah. And so he just became a friend, and he was part of our family. Like, he would do holidays with us and Sunday dinners with us and all those sorts of things, and just integrated so seamlessly into our family. And right about the time I was getting married, I was probably like 21, 22. I had said something about my family, and he, made some comment about, well, at least you have a family. And, we'd always had this conversation with him. You're a part of our family. Yeah. And for him, that was hard to believe, because he had had families throughout his life that had kind of taken him under their wing, but life would just happen and they would just kind of disconnect. Nothing, no fallout or anything. But
what gets reinforced in him is this idea of like, see,
yep,
nobody's really there for you.
Really, yeah.
To the end, yeah.
Yeah. So he just had this just deep longing for a sense of belonging, a sense of family. And so I had dropped out of law school right around that time and had about 6 months of a legal education. So enough to do a little research. Yeah. And just looked it up, and I was like, well, in the state of North Carolina, you can legally adopt an adult. And I was like, if there's any family crazy enough to do that, it would be ours. And so we went to the courthouse. The father, his first adoptive father, sent a note saying, have a nice life. They had to alert both the families. And so that's all he got from them. And then the other family, the mom and the stepfather showed up. And it was just a very strange interaction. It wasn't someone that was like, oh my gosh, like, why are you doing this? Like, we love you kind of thing. It was kind of scary, like harsh and cruel. And he was just shaking the whole time during that court proceeding. But legally, I mean, the judge is like, you're saying you're a legal adult, you can decide, these sorts of things. Went through with the adoption, and so he legally became a part of our family when he was 25 years old. It was such a healing piece of his story. Like, it was just this finality of like, no, you have a place, you have a home, you have a sense of belonging. And it wasn't met without like moments where he would kind of test it. He would go through these cycles of, he wouldn't answer our phone calls. He wouldn't open the door when we'd come by. We'd have to sit out there just until he would come, be going to work or something. And it was this testing of like, are you for real? Like, are you going to stay with us?
Do you think he would consciously do you think it was just kind of like part of a subconscious trauma response? What's your insight into that?
Yeah, I think I had a lot to do with his attachments and just, attachment issues and just, he wanted to believe like we were really going to stay, but a sense of him is like, everybody else has left me.
Yeah. As much as he desired it, it's almost more comfortable to just continue to operate with the jadedness and the guardness as you start to see your guard begin to fall and you're beginning to let that down. It's really scary.
Yeah.
Because there's the potential then of
pain.
Well, yeah. I've felt this. I don't want to feel this anymore. So it's just easier for me to put my guard up. And now.
Yeah. So he would cycle through that. And as the years went on, it would get longer between those kind of cycles. And eventually, he did kind of consciously realize it, and we would joke about it. We'd call it when he'd go off grid, and he recognized that what he was doing, but I think it took some time and just some healing and just, time to know that we were for real and we were really going to be there for him. So just had a unique healing and redemptiveness in his own story just through our family and him becoming a part of it. But he was also a healing, redemptive part of our family too, just in who he was. But
well, I got some insight. I sat at a dinner table with your mom and with Alexis and a couple of other folks, and just asked and I got to hear Lexi's adoption story, got to hear all of the adoption stories, and then got to hear Zach's story from them. And one thing that I know you probably won't mention that they mentioned was that you and Zach had a very, very unique connection and friendship and sisterhood, brotherhood right there, that you were very close. And there was something, and I know this about you, Catherine, that you would never tout yourself, but you are a connector even in our ministry, that you have this unique way of caring for other people and just helping other people feel belonging and helping them to feel important, especially on important days. And so they would tell me stories about how you're throwing birthday parties for him, and it's the big birthday, it's like everything to help him feel like you've got a family with us. And so you guys had a closeness that that makes this additionally difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. He was my best friend, and, my husband Rick's best friend. They had such a great brotherhood in that. And then just a special uncle too. Zach was never married. He didn't have children, but my husband was gone a lot with the military. And so Zach was coming up on weekends and mowing the yard and helping me with the kids and that busy season of young motherhood. And so they just had such a unique bond as well. And so, Fast forward to 2018. My sister Alexis had just graduated college. We had come down to the beach for just a celebration. She had brought some friends down, and so we were there that weekend as a family. And Zach, he worked shift work. He worked third shift a lot, so it wasn't abnormal for him to be really tired at family stuff. You know, he's coming off third shift and hadn't slept or whatever. But this weekend was different. Like, it was even more so than normal. He was super lethargic. Was having a hard time going up and down stairs. Just had kind of jokingly mentioned, you know, I think I might have pulmonary edema. And we were like, what? Like, you need to go to the doctor. You need to go get that checked out. And so immediately after that weekend, he went to the urgent care, drove straight there from the beach to the urgent care and got in there, and they listened to his heart. And instead of like the dub-dub sound that your heart's supposed to make, it was making this whoosh sound. And ended up sending him straight to the ER. The ER sent him straight to the cardiothoracic unit. After about 3 days of tests, they finally came back and they said, okay, we know what's going on. You have an aortic valve leak, which means this is Christy's department, so I'm not the medical person, but basically the valve that opens and shuts to allow the blood flowing was kind of stuck on open. And so the heart had been working really hard. You know, it's supposed to be about the size of your fist. It was about double, almost triple its size. Had pushed his esophagus to a 45-degree angle and was about a couple centimeters off his chest cavity. And so it was serious. And they were serious. They were like, this is, you know, a major, you need a valve replacement. He also had an aneurysm that they said if it would have, you know, bust or whatever, he would have died instantaneously. And so they were like, this is serious. You know, they didn't really talk death. They talked more of the process of recovery, that it was going to be 6 to 8 weeks. It was, you know, major surgery, open heart surgery type thing. And so, so he went in for surgery a couple days, you know, I guess that was probably day 4 after going in. And the surgery waiting room, they had like a board. It kind of reminds me of the Arrival Departure, you know, TV screen, and it would have like the patient number, and it would tell you where they are in the process of the surgery. So we were the first people in that room that day, and they said 6 to 8 hours, and they came out pretty close to about lunchtime, and they were like, you know, we were in there, we got the valve replaced, but because of the way the tissue had stretched, it basically collapsed. And so they weren't able to repair the valve. So they were like, we're going to keep trying. And, you know, and so hours are going on, and we're kind of watching that board as people have come in after us and they're leaving. And pretty soon it's about midnight, 1 o'clock. This just young doctor, just tears in his eyes, comes out, and he's like, we worked really hard, but it would not hold. We've got him, he's been on bypass all day. We've now got him on ECMO, which is basically doing the work of the heart and the lungs. His chest cavity's still open. We weren't able to finish anything, so we're not able to close his chest. But that hospital could only support the ECMO machine for about 24 hours, so he had to be transferred with his chest still open to the local, very prestigious teaching hospital down the road. And so he gets there at about 5 or 6, or we get there at about 5 or 6 in the next morning. And it's kind of like a scene out of like a bad medical show. Like the doctors are just kind of bumbling around. They're very young. I mean, like they look fresh out of medical school. The nurse is trying to figure out his case and what's going on. And she's like, when did this happen? 3 or 4 days ago? Like, they have no clue. His name is misspelled on his medical wristband. So we're watching them try to pull up his information, and they're having a hard time. And so just from the start, when we stepped into that hospital, it was just like, okay, I don't know what kind of care we're about to get into. And so he was there. And they basically let his body rest for a couple days, and then they came to us and said, okay, we're going to do another round of surgery, and there's about 5 or 6 things that need to happen. You know, his chest was still open from the first surgery. He was on ECMO. he had some things, I think they're called cannulas, put in, and just a couple other things. And they were like, the doctor that we spoke to was like, but we're not going to do all those things at once. That would be too aggressive. And so he goes in for the surgery with another doctor, comes out, and he starts to crash. And they have to open his chest back up, put him back on ECMO. And the doctor is, trying to explain to us, what had happened in the surgery. And basically those things that the one doctor told us would be too aggressive, they had done all of them. And so his body just couldn't take it. And the doctor was very kind of indignant about the fact that we were asking questions and confused from, so just the whole situation there. It's just kind of, any family that's been in an ICU knows it's a roller coaster of emotions. You get a little bit of hope with one test or one result, and then it crashes the next minute. So it was just several days of up and down hope. There was another surgery that had to happen, and just a lot of moments of, I'd never been in like a serious medical situation like that, but just a lot of trauma around the care that we didn't really get in terms of just humanity and kindness and compassion, and just not knowing and understanding what was happening fully and not having it fully explained. But basically after about 14 days from the time Zach went into that first urgent care, we had to make end-of-life decisions. And so he passed away in June of that year. And so that kind of sent me into a tailspin that eventually led me to your story. I'd heard your story before, and I think I'd followed you on Instagram or something. And after losing Zach, there was like this convergence of three terrible things. The loss of Zach. I went through a spiritual thing that I didn't know what it was called then, but I know now it's called a dark night of the soul, where basically I had always had this very connected relationship with God. I could feel his presence. I could hear him very clearly, not audibly, but just in our communication, I could sense him, and that was just gone. And the only way I describe it is like a light switch. Like it was there one day and it was just off the next. And so this happened right at that same time. I had like a few like moments where I could sense God was there in the hospital, and one in particular where he told me that like this wasn't going to end the way I wanted. And I think that was like a protective thing for me. And then it kind of went out again. And then, so I had that, plus the loss of Zach. And then just, we had been so deeply connected to a local church and just had such deep friendships. And just a lot of people didn't know what to do or how to engage with us in our pain and in our grief. And so they didn't. So we had the loss of community and a lot of secondary losses. I'd started a ministry and knew I was supposed to lay it down about a year before that, but just felt like I couldn't even, get out of bed. So I had to lay that down. So lots of losses there of identity and just all these different things. Yeah. So I was just desperate, just searching for hope and just someone. It was very isolating. I just felt like I couldn't find anybody that understood the pain I was enduring. And I think it was 2019. You probably could remember better than I, maybe December time. But I was kind of desperate, and I was just like, I think, is it Peter that says like, Lord, where would I go? Like it's not that I was going to quit God, but I was just like, you got to throw me a bone. Like there's got to be something. I haven't heard you for over a year. Like I've lost everything. It felt like the loss of Zach was this string getting pulled and everything unraveled. And this was deep depression and all these things. And so I just was like, all right, Lord, like I need tangible presence. Like I need a tangible experience with you of like knowing that you still hear me, that you're still there. And two things happened. One, I'd been following you, and I think maybe Nothing Is Wasted at that point. I don't know if you guys had Instagram then, but
I don't know if we did or not. We had the podcast.
yeah, the podcast. Yeah. And so there was a contest, which I hate saying it was a contest, but I think that's what it was, where it was like,
it was basically like a free giveaway.
Application.
Send your application.
For the Pain to Purpose course and coaching sessions with Davey Blackburn. And so I just applied for that on a whim. And then also I applied for an internship with a Christian author named Crystal Evans-Hurst. And I just kept saying on that application, I was like, I am not a college kid, just so you know. I am in my late 30s, because I just thought internship meant, a college kid kind of thing. And I got both those things. So there was like this parallel thing that God was doing. On one hand, I started doing the Pain to Purpose course and coaching with you. And I had been in therapy at that point, which was helpful in kind of identifying, and processing through some things. But there was something about coaching that was so transformative at a much quicker speed. And I think it was just having felt so alone and so isolated, and having that compassionate witness who's like not just coming from a theoretical, but from like, I knew you got it. And even our stories are so different, but I knew you understood some of the threads of emotion I was enduring and some of the questions I was asking. And that was very healing. And, I know now what that is, just learning so much about trauma, but there's like that mirror neurons that was just kind of meeting of just, seeing your reaction to my pain and just hearing. There are some things you pushed me on that you probably don't even remember saying or doing, but that God used to I was kind of in this place where it was very possible I would have got stuck. In a lot of bitterness and anger and resentment, over a lot of things, over God, over people, over all these different things. Mm-hmm. And there were some things that you said to me in that coaching that just kind of dug me out a little bit and just gave me that push I needed to move through, not get over, but to move through it. And so there was that kind of healing side happening. And then on this other side, I had gotten this internship, and it was just this affirmation of some giftings that I didn't really know I had. I'd always been a writer, but, I had no idea like how I could write or what level I could write. I just, hadn't been challenged in that way. I had with the ministry I started, I was writing all my curriculums because it was for military families, and I couldn't find stuff that spoke to kind of their needs and that sort of thing. So I was writing my own stuff. And so it was just this like convergence of these two things happening. And then finished the coaching with you. And I think it was a couple months later, I don't know what prompted you, but you called me out of the blue and just were kind of like, what were you doing over at that internship again? And I just kind of shared some of the things. And I think you had some projects or something. Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second, and I'll give you a little bit of my side of the story. But I am curious. I want to, you've got several buckets of, I guess, categories of trauma or categories of grief that you even laid out for us right here. And we won't be able to double click on each one of these, but I'm curious which of these. There's the medical trauma and the lack of trust then as an after effect of like the kind of care that we even receive. And, I know that going back into a hospital for me was extremely difficult. It was another level of running toward the roar. And there's a large part of my calling in life is to go into the hospital and meet people in these kinds of situations. Right. And so it's like, so there's a lot to unpack there. There's the massive level of loss of just this beautiful redemptive story that God has allowed you guys to be a part of, and as for you and for Zach, and then to experience the loss of that so suddenly, so traumatically, and just all the fallout from that. You've got the loss of community that ensued after that, with just experiencing difficult reality where a seemingly young church just didn't know how to handle that, didn't know how to care for that. Mm-hmm. I'm curious for you, and then you've got like the silence of God in all of that. So there's several other layers within that, but that's already what I heard, some of those like 4 buckets. Which of those has been the most challenging for you in terms of like finding healing and repair in that? They've all been part of your healing journey.
Yeah.
You've been working through all of these things. I know we've had an upfront seat to it, but what would you say has been the most challenging for you?
Yeah.
And why?
I would say, the community piece and the God piece, because those were kind of sure footings I had for a long time. Like I kind of prided myself on this relationship that I had with God that was very clear. Like I could just hear him so clearly, and I wanted to be the good Christian girl. And I loved the Bible. I loved studying scripture. I'd done a lot for God, but I think you've talked about this too, of just when trauma happens, there's an undoing that happens, not just around that pain point, but also all these other things that had nothing to do with the trauma that God wants to reveal and undo in you. And so part of that undoing in me were a lot of detachments where he was like, you've kind of attached identity here. I was, even before I lost Zach, I was running at a pace that was not healthy or sustainable in ministry. I was kind of...
Wait, hold on, Catherine. You were running at a really fast pace? That's hard for me to believe. Well, you are not...
It happens.
Someone who...
Yeah. But I mean,
Catherine has an incredible capacity, by the way. Just we have a little bit of an inside joke where in high capacity. And there are times I look at her and I'm like, I don't see how you're doing all of these things. Well, of course, you look at us and you say the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
It's the pot calling the kettle black over here.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I had a high capacity, but also, I was deriving so much identity and sense of belonging and all these different things from doing and serving and over serving and over giving. And so that came crashing down, and God was just revealing a lot of unhealth in that area, even in relationships. Like Enneagram 2 helper, I kind of went a mile wide and a mile deep with people. And so when I lost Zach, I felt like I had made all these relational deposits, and I was going to the bank and I was a millionaire, and I go to the bank to collect, and it's like,
there's been a run on the bank.
There's nothing in there.
There's nothing there.
So there was just a lot there that God, and a lot of it was like codependency and just a lot of unhealthy things. Probably we could trace it back to, the beginning of my story, but that God wanted to heal. But the piece with him was probably one of the hardest ones, because I had learned to do for him. And I believe you've talked about this too, like where you think there's a transactional thing where it's like, I do for you, you do for me. And so God broke this unspoken agreement that I had made up. And so it was this, deconstruction in the sense of like what I'd believed to be true about him and what I believed to be true about how he worked in my relationship with him, and him having to undo a lot of that. And so he started kind of pulling me towards, I didn't have the word for it then, but more contemplative practices of just learning to be with him. Instead of doing with him. And so there was a lot of like spiritual formation things that he had to do with in me. And that was part of that healing that. And even now it's like, I feel like Jacob, where like I'm walking with a limp with him, like there's still things that get pressed or happen. And, it's constant. I think John Eldridge describes it as like healing our union with God. And that was really helpful to me, because I had this sense of like, I feel like I'm supposed to forgive you for something, but that doesn't line up, because I know that you don't do anything that requires forgiveness from me. But there's rupture in our relationship, and there needs to be some sort of repair. And I couldn't figure out the language for it. But he talks a lot about like how suffering and pain will erode our union with God. And that's the prayer. Lord, heal my union with you. And so that was really helpful to kind of start that process of like just healing with him of like, he didn't do this, like it wasn't his doing to bring all this pain and all that, but that I felt that he had some responsibility or whatever, and he wanted to heal that rupture that happened because of the pain and the suffering. And so that's probably been the longest journey of it all.
You know what's really interesting as you're saying this, the fallout of the crises that were taking place in your life. You said it really well, that Zach's death was like a thread that when it was pulled, it unraveled everything. Mm-hmm. God, instead of like helping you to see all those things and do something about those things, he brought you instead into a journey of being. Mm-hmm. I'm still watching you play, that's the thing. That's what shifted so much I've seen even in your time with us is your focus has been on a whole lot of the contemplative practices. It's been on a lot of the spiritual formation, and even the stuff that you're bringing to our team, right? Suggestions, recommendations of people to follow and read and be up on. It's like that kind of a space right here. It's not this like, let's go charge hell with a water pistol. Let's go, bring the kingdom of God to earth and that kind of, right? But it's like, hey, let's figure out who we are. Let's make sure that our inner man and inner woman is attuned to where there are ruptures in our union with Christ. And then let's like re-secure those. Let's just get quiet with space and solitude with God and really heal from the inside out. And then we can do, but we're doing from a different place.
Yeah.
And what's occurring to me is that actually is the pathway of pain to purpose.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? When you think about the 4 or the 3 modules, right? And you've got these waypoints right here is kind of sorting through the debris, figuring out what happened, the layers of loss that have taken place here. What do I do with these? Mm-hmm. Then you've got that middle part that literally, it almost seems disjointed. It's like, well, let's just be.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I think about it, it's like strategically, that doesn't seem like what you would do. And yet that is exactly what our healing journeys have looked like.
Yeah.
It's like we're now on the surgery table and God is, as a kind surgeon, he's going to, okay, let's talk about these things right here. Let's address these things right here.
Yeah.
And then we go to the place of, all right, well, what does this look like to repurpose this? Now I can actually, he is asking me to partner with him in doing something, but it's going to be a doing that comes from a different well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I wanted, and you're probably built a little bit like this, but I felt like grief was a problem to solve.
Yeah.
And pain was a problem to solve. And so I went down this track of like reading and learning. I mean, I was reading books and I bring them to my therapist and he's like, I've never read that. And he was in his PhD program. So I was like getting like, I mean, I probably could have a PhD at this point,
sure.
But I just wanted to solve it and fix it and we could move on. And God was like, that's not how this is going to work. I want to first just sit with you in the valley, in the dark, and just feel the pain. And that was really hard, especially, I think so much of grief is anger. And that's not an emotion I love. So just feeling that and just experiencing that. And then, it was like, there was no solving it. Like it hasn't been solved, but it's been companioned. It's been witnessed. It's been, walked with. And I think that has been what has led to the healing, any healing that I've experienced more so than any, right answer in terms of grief and pain.
Yeah. Well, I was telling your mom this, I was telling your sister this, that when we received your application, I think we received we were giving away 10, I think is what it was, maybe 5. I don't remember if it was 5 or 10, but we received 40 some applications. And Christy and I were sorting through these ourselves because we didn't have anybody where there was no staff where nothing is wasted at the time. So we're sorting through these and I'm kind of reading through them. And I have a very poor sense of discernment, just so you guys know that you're listening. I have zero discernment. So Christy is the discerner of our family. And I think I read your application and for no reason, I just kind of put it to the side as it wasn't like it was an unimpressive application. It wasn't anything like that. It just didn't strike me. And Christy picks it up and she goes, we have to have her. This is one of them. And I'm like, really? Okay, tell me why. And I was like, okay, I trust you, And, aside from all the other stuff that we've done together, Catherine, my time with you was the most meaningful of all of those, because I think you helped me more as much as I helped you. Not necessarily from a place of healing, but from a place of like learning how to be with someone, learning how to mirror someone, learning how to like minister in that space. And on top of that, then if you remember this, I asked all of you guys, I said, hey, as part of this, will you just send me an assessment of what you thought about it? Because this is when we were kind of piloting and test driving Pain to Purpose. We were trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, how do we edit, how do we iterate? And everyone else was like, oh, it was amazing. It was like a lot of surface level stuff. It's like, oh, it was great. It was awesome. I love this here. I was like, but no, it can't be that good. This is our first run of this thing, right? Like, I know you're a writer, I'm a writer. It's like first several drafts are, you got to put the red ink to it, Yeah. And there were some things that you were like, this is really, really helpful. And then there were other things you were very detailed and thorough about, hey, I think I would change this here and I would do this here. And that's when I read that and I told Christy, I said, we have to hire her. I said, whatever,
suggestions.
Yeah, but no, it was helpful because this is someone who gets it, who understands, and it looks like it's someone who would want to build too, who could help us like figure out we're in this blue ocean of a space where the church isn't doing a whole lot in this space at that point, especially, right? This was 2019. This was moving into 2020.
Yeah.
So this was still not even a conversation on the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah.
Became a lot more in the aftermath of 2020. So I'm like, so I don't remember the first thing I asked you, but I was like, I don't know if it was like writing assistance or.
It was like a brainstorm of like
maybe
classes or something. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. I was like, hey, can you just do some researching, brainstorming, assisting of writing stuff with me? And then from there, I think one of the first major projects you did is you edited the devotional that I was putting together.
First devotional.
Yeah. The 42-day devotional.
Yep.
And so it was like, can you edit this? Can you tweak this? Can you take that same red ink and tell me what's good, what's not? And you basically became the, like, I don't know what you call it, but like executive editor or something like that, or of the devotional.
Yep.
And that started our journey together then.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So from there then, Catherine, go ahead. I just hijacked it, but that was my perspective of that.
Yeah, no. And then, and I think then I don't know if it was like a year or so later, podcast producer was leaving and I had fallen in love with podcasting with my internship. And I remember even before, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I just prayed one day. I was like, God, it would be really cool to be a podcast producer, but I don't know how a stay-at-home mom would ever get such a gig. But and so I just kind of like, I think I meekly raised my hand and was like, I have no experience here, but just from what I've learned at my internship, I'd love to try the podcast producing. And, I think I talk about this in the project that we're about to release with the devotional, just that the power of stories. And I see what we get to do as like collecting stories. And it's just, I just love it. Like, I just love hearing people's stories. I love hearing how they have walked through pain and suffering and found God in the midst of it and how they fought for hope, and I think before my story with Zach, I thought hope was just this very clean, kind of look on the bright side sort of thing, but it's not. It's very gritty. It's very messy. Like it's you got to fight for it. And so that's what I love about what we get to do on the podcast of just, there's just these gritty stories of people fighting for hope, and we get to share those. And, whether it's your story or not in terms of the details of it, I think everybody that listens can find a piece of hope and a piece of their story and a piece of their wrestlings with God or whatever they're walking through in the stories we share. So,
that's a common thread of what I hear from people, as I'm out speaking and they're like, oh, I've been listening to the podcast. And they go, what's remarkable is like, I glean so much from someone who's gone through the same thing I have, which is why we have curated pathways and different things like that to help you connect with others who have walked through the same thing. But they go, but what's remarkable is I'm gleaning from people who have walked a totally different road as me. And even their insights in that is helping to round out my experience.
Yeah.
Helping me see God in a different way that's beneficial to my own healing journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the power of it, of telling stories.
Yeah. Some guy told me once that pain is the common denominator. So, you know.
That sounds really good.
Smart guy.
I put that in my back pocket and use that.
Yeah. So I think that's it. It's like it connects us even if the details differ. So
Yeah. So if you're watching this, you're listening to this, Catherine, pretty much every piece of content we have ever put out at this point, Catherine's had her hand on it and she's touched it, whether it's like she's full-fledged produced it or she's edited it and so the power of, even if you love the podcast, you've got to understand, like, Catherine's the mastermind behind the podcast. She just brings great people, puts them in front of me, and we get to have these really, really rich conversations. And so I'm so grateful for the space that you're creating, because in your pain, you're helping thousands of people heal as well. And I don't think that you would have ever seen that back in 2018, that's what God had for you. But it is really beautiful to look back now and see the hand of God through your story. Yeah. Especially as you're helping the church heal. I remember that was one of the marking things you said in our coaching sessions was like, how do we help the church know how to help people? Yeah. And now that is very much a major part of what we do as an organization. Yeah. Is providing these resources to help the church as they're walking beside people. Yeah. I mean, it's such like a mandate, mourn with those who mourn. Just a calling of all of us, but especially the church. I think if people are looking for healing and they can't find it in the church, we've talked about this so much, like, where are they going to go? We need to be that front line of a place of healing for people. So, yeah. You've spearheaded this really, really cool project. Yes. I remember when you and Christy came to me and said, hey, we're going to do this devotional. And you told me about it. I was like, this sounds amazing. And I said, well, I have some thoughts. You're like, nope, this is our project. We're going to take care of it. I'm like, okay, you guys take it, go for it. Right. Yeah. And it's been unbelievable to see this thing unfold over this last year. And we're releasing it now as of the release of this podcast, pre-orders, correct? Help me on my timeline, Catherine. You're the person. This is going to, they should be live at this point. Okay. So it's live at this point. So pre-orders have already happened. So you may have already pre-ordered yours. It's live. It should be on our store so you can go and purchase it. The devotional itself is called Hope in the Valley, and it is a 42-day devotional, 42 days of healing through the Psalms after loss, grief, and tragedy. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. We talk about this often, that there are seasons of life that you have to borrow people's faith when you don't have it of your own. Yeah. And that really is how the podcast started. It's like, hey, come listen to all of these people that I've been borrowing faith from, right? Yeah. But tell me the vision behind this project, because this is a collection of a lot of different voices. Yeah, it was really that idea of story, right? Like story, and just seeing in other people's story hope, and just all the things that we need to hold on to when we're in the valley, but also the intersection of the Psalms. And for me, the Psalms were a lifeline. I mean, I think you've probably experienced this too, but after loss, I couldn't read scripture like I used to. I couldn't study it like I used to. And I just got a sense, and I know this is the Spirit now, but I didn't know it then, but I just got the sense, like, just go to the Psalms, Psalm 23, read it over and over and over again. And for a year, that's all I did. I just read Psalm 23 over and over and over again. And it was this idea of like, everything you need to know about God is in Psalm 23, about who he is in the valley, about what he's doing in the valley is in that psalm. And so that was like this crux for me of just healing. And then from there, I started reading other psalms, and I just realized that the psalms have the gamut of human emotion, from questions to doubts to fears to anger to all, just the whole breadth of human emotion. And there was a time after Zach died where I wasn't sleeping, and I found this sermon from Tim Keller, who I love and who just pastored me from afar through that season. And it was on Psalm 88. And Psalm 88 is, if you haven't read it, it's one of the grittier
kind of a dark psalm in the sense that most psalms, they, kind of have this lament piece at the front end where it's like, where are you, God? What are you doing? And then there's a turning point where the psalmist goes, but I remember, or yet I call to mind. And Kurt Thompson describes that as like what's actually happening when we lament and name our pain, that the brain will move from that emotional side into the logical side of remembering who God is and the ways he's been faithful in the past. Psalm 88 doesn't do that. It stays dark the whole time. I think the last line is something about, darkness is my only friend or something very hyperbolic and just kind of woe is me and deep. And so Keller was kind of commenting on this psalm, and he was like, well, why is it in there? And he goes, it's in there because it's honest. And the Bible is honest, and it's not trying to sell you something. It's not trying to give you a half truth. And he said, sometimes it feels like this. Like the darkness is it. We know that's not the truth of it, but it's the honest part of the human experience that sometimes you feel completely abandoned or hopeless or whatever. And so there's that honesty in Psalm 88 and in the Psalms of just our experience as humans, especially with grief and trauma. And so, that was very important to me. Like, how do we intersect these stories with the Psalms? And so that's what we did. We took past podcast guests, a bunch of Nothing is Wasted coaches, people on our team, and we asked them to just share a part of their story and connect it with a psalm and how that psalm spoke into their pain and spoke into their valley and how it gave them hope. And so that's what this whole project is really about, is just connecting these stories with the hope that can be found in the Psalms.
Yeah. One of the things that's been really fun for me about this project is hearing from other people that I had no idea were going to be a part of this project.
I love that.
Which is probably my fault, because you sent at the beginning, like, here's all the people we're inviting to be in this project. And I was probably in a very busy season that I just wasn't able to really take a look at it, and also trusted you and Christy with this explicitly and was like, hey, you guys take it and go. But then getting to hear from people and be like, oh, I just sent in my Hope in the Valley contribution. And I'm like, that's
awesome.
Oh, so cool. You're a part of it too. Right? I remember Ron Deal texting me and was like, hey, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool to have. So it's a little bit of like a fun surprise to have some of my friends from the podcast coming back on, or some of our coaches, or even some folks that people have never heard from, right?
And your parents.
And my parents.
Don't forget your parents. Yeah.
I know. And it's just a sweet way. It actually is it tracks with who you are, Catherine, in terms of like adding some sweet little surprises, some like things that are very meaningful in whatever you do, whatever you touch, and how you interact with our team and interact with us. And it's just, it's been such a cool process in and of itself. And then you also forced me to get back to writing.
Yes.
Which was very good, even though I haven't had much space to write. And now it's opened up a whole lot more ideas for me and things that other projects that I want us to do. And so I'm grateful for that, even though I resisted it for a while. Like, I don't have time to write.
It's really good. Yeah. No. And your kind of entries are framing it with Psalm 23, which is just really beautiful that's woven through there. So yeah. It's so good.
What are you hoping people receive when they open this up? What are you hoping they walk out with? Especially those who have gone through the Pain to Purpose devotional. This is a great addendum to that. But how would you differentiate it?
Yeah. Yeah, I even hesitate to call it a resource. Like, I feel like this is like a companion. Like, it is something that is just going to be with you in the valley, walk with you through it. And even just kind of the arc of it is just like, hey, those emotions at the beginning when you just feel like you've just fallen into the valley, and just that progression into hope. And so that's really my hope, is that people feel like witnessed in their pain, that they're not alone in their pain, that there are people that understand, that there are people who have had hard sufferings and losses, and they've fought for hope, and that you can do that too. I think both you and I have found that to be a huge part of our healing, is just looking to the stories of saints who have gone before us in some sort of way and who have fought for hope. And that's what I think people are going to get out of this. And it's just a great resource to give to someone who's hurting, who's walking through pain, and you just don't know what to say, or you may not have experience with it. This is something that you can just hand someone and they can feel seen and felt and understood, and all those things that you need when you're in the valley.
Yeah. This is going to feel, I hope it doesn't take away the weightiness of but I just thought of a metaphor that guided me when I was younger. We would go to theme parks. We grew up going to like Six Flags, and when I was probably about Weston's age, it was the first time I went to a theme park with my friends for the first time. And I was like really scared of the roller coasters. I was like, I cannot do that. But all my friends were doing it. So I'm like, I'm going to have to grit this out. But while standing in line, I would see these like 3 or 4 year olds going on this roller coaster. And I would go, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah.
If they can get through this, I can get through it too. Mm-hmm. And then the first couple rides around the roller coaster were extremely scary. It was very daunting, but then I began to appreciate the roller coaster. Then I began to enjoy the roller coaster. Now I look back on it, and although my equilibrium isn't quite right, and all of that kind of stuff after I get off of them, but now I see my son at the same age, mm-hmm. and the same kind of fear and trepidation, and I'm going, hey buddy, you can look, if they can get through it, you can get through it. And I feel like that's a lot of what the Psalms is for us. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a lot of what, when we read the stories of history of some of these men and women, the saints that have gone before us, the great cloud of witnesses, that they're bearing testimony to, hey, this is my story. This is my scar. This is what I've been through. But look, God got me through this. And when you read this devotional, when it as a companion, when you carry this with you, you're going to hear the stories of other people who would say, I'm not the hero of the story, but let me tell you how God has gotten me through this. And if God got me through this, he can also get you through this as well.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some of these things that you'll glean in the midst of it.
Yeah.
We're providing a space for you right here for you to undergo that surgical procedure that the Lord is desiring in your life, so that you can come through and you can have just this deep, rich well, and not appreciation is not, but love and delight and the richness of who God is.
Yeah. And I think it's faith building. I think when you see the unique and personal ways in which God enters people's pain, it just builds your faith that, okay, he did that for this person. He did that for this person. He did that for this person. I know he's going to do that for me. And he is. And sometimes it's a matter of being able to see, like we just can't see it because we're in this storm, this cloud, this dark valley. And it just takes time sometimes to see the ways in which he's personally and uniquely showing up in the valley for us. I think this helps the reader get eyes to see what God's doing in their own life through the stories of what he has done in other people's lives.
So good. I have to imagine this is probably just like any of these kinds of purpose-filled projects. It also really brings healing to your own pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can
you talk to me about that? How's this last year been for you specifically as you've dove into this project?
Yeah. I think God just has used it to remind me of where I've come from in the valley. I wrote a couple entries, and so I had to go back to places in my story that I hadn't been for a while. And it just was kind of like, I got the metaphor of the valley very early on after losing Zach. And I just feel like not quite to the mountaintop, but I'm at a little higher elevation. And just being able to look back and see how far I've come and see what God's done, and see just even in the work that I get to do now of just how that's just a part of that healing process that he's still doing in me. And so it just continues to build my faith and my trust in him, which I feel like is, when you go through loss and pain and trauma, it can be eroded sometimes. And so it's just that rebuilding that he's constantly doing in us. So yeah, I'm grateful for it.
Well, you have your hand on a whole lot of stuff in our ministry. You have a front row seat to how different aspects of Nothing is Wasted is helping people move through different parts of their valley.
Yeah.
I'm curious your perspective on that. I mean, I talk about it all the time, right? But I'd love to hear from you. What are the ways that you see Nothing is Wasted is able to help support people in the different parts of their valley? Because there are parts of the valley, right? There's different seasons of it. There's different, if you look at a map, there's going to be different locations in your valley. They're going to have different and unique challenges. And so we want to meet you in that place right there in your pain and provide you a pathway through that season. So tell me about the ways that Nothing is Wasted can support people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much. I mean, all the content we're developing or that we have available are really just meeting at these different places. Like we have When Everything Changes, which is like if you're in that very early season, just found yourself dropped into the valley of pain and suffering, or Pain to Purpose, which, after you kind of getting your bearings a little bit and just ready to move through. We talk about that a lot, moving through, not getting over. And the fact that Pain to Purpose can be done in churches, I think is just life-changing, where you can have community come around you in person in your area and go through the course together. There's so much healing that happens just in you kind of wrestling through Pain to Purpose within a group setting where you just hear other people's thoughts and feedback and what they've walked through. And so I think that's a huge piece. And then, we have the podcast, which is constant stories of people and experts who kind of giving you these like lights of guidance of how to walk through, and then just putting that together for people around specific pain points with the curated pathways. So, I mean, I think there's just, we have so much available. And I think part of the discernment for a lot of people is just, where to start. And so I would just say, kind of figure out where you are in the valley. If it's really fresh and new, start with When Everything Changes. But Pain to Purpose is just like it's something God used in my own story. And I think it created the scaffold for, like what you mentioned of me learning this more way of being with God and doing out of that being is just what I think we all need in terms of our healing and our spiritual formation. So there's a lot. There's a lot always creating more.
Even as you bring this up, we're about to, as we're recording this in 2 weeks, we're going into our staff advance, which is our strategic planning time. And I'm like, man, there's some things we've got to do to help people get connected to these resources at the right time for them, because Pain to Purpose may not be right for you right now. Right. Whereas you're right. When Everything Changes, that's the right moment for you right there. Down the track, now we can talk about Pain to Purpose. But, that is, that's something we're passionate about, is helping you, meeting you right where you're at, meeting you in your pain. And then from there, providing a pathway through. Because every one of you guys who are listening to this and watching this, you're at a different place in your pain journey, but you're also walking through a different kind of pain journey. Yeah. And, it's very easy to feel isolated, to buy into the lie from the enemy that you are the only one going through this. But we have the promise of 1 Peter 5 that says, let us not forget there are saints all over the world who are suffering in the same way that we are. And there's something about knowing that other people are also walking through the same thing, and other people have walked through it. Yeah. And other people have, through this journey, have been enriched. And there can be guides to come back and walk with you in that journey. There's something about that solidarity that goes, okay, I can make it too. Yeah. I can make it too. And so we're devoted as an organization and a ministry to really help you in that, to connect you with the right people, the right resources that you need right now in this real time. And I know that's been huge for Catherine in her own life and her own story. I know that also you get to be a part of creating that for other people. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, you can pick up Hope in the Valley, this 42-day devotional. Again, Hope in the Valley, 42 Days of Healing Through the Psalms After Loss, Grief, and Tragedy at nothingiswasted.com/Hope in the Valley. We'll put a link here below this YouTube video in the show notes. Catherine, I'd love for you to just tell us, how can we follow along with your journey? There's many, many aspects to your journey. Yeah. You have a very interesting life that a lot of people need to follow along.
I
a lot
know.
more than
I just don't have a very like public anything.
Well, it takes a whole lot of time,
Instagram,
and you don't have a whole lot of
No,
time.
but I'm always around Nothing is Wasted. So
That's right.
anything you see going on there, that's pretty much you're following along with what I'm doing.
And if you want to peer into anything, if we want to follow you like on Instagram or something like that, so that we can peer into the homeschool journey, you often open up the hood on some of that stuff. We want to peer into everything else that's going on in your life.
Yep.
Do you want people to follow along?
I'm trying to think what my username is. at the cat fits, I think.
At the cat fits.
Yep, I think that's it. So yeah, I'm over there.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I'm so grateful for you. So grateful for your entire family. So grateful that you gave Zach belonging. You know, the thread of Zach's story is heart, right? For a lot of reasons. But you gave his heart. His heart was finally settled with belonging because of you guys. And I don't know how in the world you can paint a better picture of the hands and feet of Jesus. So thank you for doing that. I know that he is eternally grateful, and I know he's cheering you on right now.
Thanks. Thanks, Davey.
So proud of you, friend.
Thank you.
Love you. Love the entire family.
Love you guys.
Thanks for sharing with our community. This is really, really fun for them to hear from you.
Now to get on the other side of the camera again.
Yeah, now you got to go edit this, right?
Yeah,
you got to go and lead the team to. Awesome. We love you, friend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Davey.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found it as encouraging and insightful as we did. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen, and leave us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us to connect to those who need these stories of hope and healing most, and to reach more listeners just like you. Also, subscribe to our Nothing is Wasted Ministries YouTube channel. Now be sure to stay connected with us on social media. You can follow us at Nothing is Wasted Ministries. Follow me at Davey Blackburn. We'd love to interact with you, so be sure to stop by and let us know how these conversations are impacting you and your story. And if you want to learn more about all the incredible resources we have available to help you navigate whatever valley you're walking through, visit our website at nothingiswasted.com. If you're ready to get started in your journey towards healing and finding purpose in your pain, we'd love to help. Simply go to nothingiswasted.com/start here for your next step. We want to thank our guests, and we want to thank you, our Nothing is Wasted community, for tuning in regularly. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, whatever pain you are walking through, nothing is wasted. We'll see you next time for another incredible conversation here on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. But before you go, check out this short clip from our next episode. Thanks for joining us, friends.
I don't like that the grandfather to my kids I always dreamed about having is missing. I don't like that. There are some weird consequences of my life that we deal with relationally, familially. I don't like that. Fill in the blank. That my husband travels as often as he does. That's just me. But I think when we can get honest about not liking what could be like a very likable life anyways, we start feeling guilty because we know somebody else has it off worse, or we feel a little bit like a brat. But I think that there is vulnerability and intention and even confession of your discontentness with the Lord, and he can actually do a healing work in there, which brings me to like a greater purpose where I'm like, okay, there are things that I don't like, but while I'm on this earth, I will still show up. I want to live a life that's just not half awake the whole time. I want to get to the end and be like, that was so epic. I gave it my all. Whatever that last moment is for me, to be like, I sure would have probably changed a few things because I'm a human, I'm a sinner, and I need God's grace. However, I pursued him wholly. I tried to live abundantly and try to evangelize without saying anything, just because I was able to live a life a bit on display.